Hi, everybody. This is Joe Firestone for Real Progressives. We're waiting for our guest to arrive. I don't have any indication yet that we have any technical difficulties, but we shall see. I hope you all are well tonight. Oops. Let's see now. I have a message. Great. Anyway, our guest has the link, and so I expect him momentarily, and when he arrives, then we'll start. Still no sign of him. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Mark. Hi, Dave. Hope everybody's very excited about tonight's show. Please start to share now. Oh, there he is. Steve, do we have sound?
I can hear you.
Great, and I can hear you too. I think we have a bit of feedback and some background noise coming from somewhere. So it would probably be best to turn down the volume a bit.
Hold on.
Okay.
Better?
Yeah, just a little, but I think it still needs to be turned down a little bit from there even. And I'll turn down on my side too.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can moderate this a little further and eliminate the feedback. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
That's better. Okay, I think that's fine right now. How do folks out there feel? Hi, honey. But that's my daughter who tuned in. Okay. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Mark and Dave. Okay, everyone, share like mad now. This is a very important video. Okay, this is Joe Firestone for Real Progressives. And we're here at about Thursday night, okay, at 9:05 p.m. Our guest for tonight will be Stephen Jaffe, who is a Democratic primary candidate in the California 12th, who's running against Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, and also most recently the leader of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives. And from our point of view, notorious but neoliberal, as well as a Democrat. And so we're certainly very anxious here tonight to see what Steve has to say. Okay, and so there's one thing that I want to emphasize. If Steve should win in the primary, it will shake the establishment in the Democratic Party to its core. He's running on a very progressive platform. And tonight we're going to talk about the primary issues in the platform. Also, we'll be talking about the job guarantee, the PAYGO system, and something called overt congressional financing that you are very familiar with, but I don't believe Steve is yet. Okay, if we don't get there tonight, however, we've already scheduled a broadcast to follow up this one for next but Tuesday at 8 p.m. Okay, so what we don't have a chance to cover tonight, we will cover on Tuesday of next week. Okay, did I say Tuesday or Thursday of next week?
I think you meant Thursday.
Oh, right. I meant Thursday of next week, sorry, the 15th. And so we'll be convening at 9 p.m. On the 15th again. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is to turn things over to you to talk about the platform items that you would like to emphasize for us.
You're breaking up a little bit, Joe.
Okay. What I'd like to
Say
do,
that again, please.
Okay. What I'd like to do now, Steve, is to turn things to you so you can talk about the items on your platform that you would like to emphasize for us, okay, as the most important ones.
Well, first I want to thank you for this opportunity. I very much appreciate it and live up to your expectations here.
I've been anxious to talk to you for a long time, so thank you very much for coming on.
You're right in characterizing my platform as a kind of classic progressive platform. There's a couple of planks which are really at the centerpiece of it. And as you know, politics is dynamic and it's always changing. The issue that comes up most frequently when I ask people what is most important to them is healthcare, and more particularly the issue of single payer, which I call Medicare for all because it's simply easier to understand if it's described that way. I'm for that for a whole variety of reasons. First, I think it's the only possible solution to the healthcare crisis that we're in. Our present system is obsolete, broken, and completely unsustainable. And it's been demonstrated throughout everywhere in the world that the single payer system is the one that works and produces healthier people with longer lives. Secondly, I don't see it as a financial issue. I see it as a moral issue. That's a common progressive value. Healthcare is a moral right, not an entitlement, where people should argue about profits and costs. The third reason is
I have a couple of things to say about that, okay, if I could. Okay, the first thing is that people mean different things by Medicare for all. So I'd like specifically to ask you whether you're talking about H.R. 676 or a bill similar to it in the House.
When I say Medicare for all, I mean essentially an expansion of the system which now exists, the Medicare system for senior citizens, to cover the entire population. That system would virtually eliminate most of the for-profit insurance companies, which is fine with me. I think it's obscene to make profits off the health and illness of other people. And so it is not, it's easy to describe what it isn't. It is not some kind of hybrid, euphemistic substitute or code for keeping insurance companies in business, such as public option, universal health. Even the words universal health care does not mean Medicare for all or single payer. Universal coverage is another euphemism, which is a code and a disguise for keeping insurance companies in business. I mean a pure Medicare for all healthcare system. The only kinds of insurance.
So the bill in the House right now, H.R. 676, is a bill to create that kind of system.
Yes,
No copays, okay, and also no deductibles. And it includes all basic services, equipment, pharmaceuticals, psychiatric help, chiropractic, all the things we would think of, okay, as necessary and basic health care services. The only thing it doesn't include, okay, which is not covered in it, is a cosmetic surgery, okay, of various kinds, of an elective nature. Other than that, it covers everything.
Yes, that's exactly what I have in mind. And what I was going to say is the third reason I'm in favor of it in my particular election is because I've been walking around for a couple of years talking to San Franciscans. And my district is 90% of the city of San Francisco. It's virtually the whole city. And 70 to 80% of the people I encounter, which is a low estimate, are strongly in favor of single payer. And yet the congressperson representing them not only does not support 676, she won't even sign on as a co-sponsor, she actively opposes it. And the reason she does that is pretty obvious if you think about it. It's because she takes huge donations from for-profit insurance companies, big pharma, and other healthcare concerns who have a very big stake in making sure single payer never becomes law.
Okay, and she recently said that there will never be single payer in the United States, I believe.
Well, she's wrong because it exists right now for people who are covered by Medicare. So it's already there.
And for people who are covered by the VA, of course.
Yes, that's true. That's
in
true.
fact, that's not simply a single payer system. That's a form of national health insurance, or actually a national health service for a particular group in the population. Okay, I think that's coming from your end, I believe.
Yes, it is. I'm in a room here where I don't have full control over the environment, and I apologize for that. But would you, Susan? Could you ask them to maybe? I'll send someone over there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that will be very good. Okay, so continue then.
I am for, well, one of the things that's important to me is the reformation of the Democratic Party. I'm not a Dem-Exit person. I've been a lifelong Democrat, and so is my family. I want to reform the Democratic Party. I want to abolish superdelegates, starting with that, because it's undemocratic with both a big D and a little d. And I'm not sure it's even constitutional. And the reason I say that is when you have the existence of superdelegates who can walk into a convention and change the result of a primary, change the result of a nomination process, you are disenfranchising the primary voters who voted in good faith, thinking their votes would count for something. If you can have this very large group of superdelegates go in and change results at the convention, why bother to hold the primaries?
Yes, of course. And the court decision in the Badnico House case that so far applies is that the courts have ruled that it's perfectly okay for the Democratic Party to ignore the result of the primaries and to make the selection of their nominee in the back room, as it were, because they're a private corporation.
Well, I have some very strong opinions, well-founded on 47 years of law practice, in which I most respectfully disagree with that conclusion.
Right, and I don't have the 47 years, of law practice, but I do have some constitutional law in my background.
This is not a country. Yeah, this is not a country club setting rules for how to play golf on its golf course. That's a private club. This is a process by which the very core of our democracy is determined. voting and candidates and our leaders. And so there is a very powerful public interest in assuring the public that it is carried on without lying, cheating, and stealing, which
Absolutely.
the DNC thinks it should be. The other theory I have is certainly here in California, when a primary is held, it is not a purely private function. The voting mechanisms of the government are used to conduct the primary.
Yes,
there
absolutely.
are precincts, there are voting machines. City Hall here, the Department of Elections gets involved.
Yeah, public schools are involved here.
Of course, yes, the public properties are used, firehouses, schools, and all of those things strengthen the argument that there is again a very powerful public interest in regulating and controlling this activity to make sure it's done fairly and transparently.
Yes, I completely agree, and I believe that higher courts are going to overturn the decision.
Well, they should.
We'll have to see. Okay, we'll have to see about that. Because as we know, the higher courts have been packed for some time now. Okay, can we talk about some of the other planks on your platform?
I think that I'm a non-military interventionist. I don't believe that the United States should be the policeman of the world. I do think it should use its power to the extent it has it to help preserve peace, but not inflict its version of peace on other countries. I think that the budget that was just passed, the military budget by the House and the Congress, which is in excess of $700 billion, is obscene. I would not have voted for that had I been in Congress. And what's happened, if I can take a step back and give it a little historical perspective here, is that it used to be we would build arms when our soldiers had to go off and fight wars and take care of necessary military activities. Now everything is stood on its head. Everything's inverted. Now we go to war in order to keep our defense industries busy. We're addicted to being in perpetual war because our economy is addicted to a wartime economy. And that is a vicious cycle that's got to be broken.
Yes, absolutely. And also, if you were elected to Congress, would you vote against the reauthorization of the AUMF? Okay, if that were to come up again, and would you support bringing that to the floor?
Oh, yes. A number of things that I can place side by side with my opponent. The military budget certainly is one of them. The NSA spying and FISA extension is another one I never would have voted for, which I think is violation of both constitutional rights of privacy and the Fourth Amendment.
Okay, and the Patriot Act?
Patriot Act, I think, was an impulsive, emotional response to 9/11. Some of its components are good in terms of intercommunication between agencies, but like so many other things, I call it a good idea run amok.
It's certainly run amok.
Yes, I think it's been used and abused in very many ways and needs to be reined back in to take a more reasonable stance on things.
And certain parts of it are unconstitutional, aren't they?
Well, yes, I think the FISA warrantless searches and those sorts of things are unconstitutional, and government doesn't like a lot of light shown on that.
Yes, I've been studying that now for some time. They certainly don't like a lot of things.
Yes.
Shown on that. You also have a very strong position on the internet and on the FCC decision.
Well, I mean, it won't take me long to describe this. I am for the preservation of net neutrality. I think the privatization of the internet is like the privatization of highways or power lines or anything else. Should not be done. There's too much of a compelling public interest in keeping that open and neutral rather than selling it. So, I mean, I feel very strongly on that. And I don't think the FCC decision will stand for very long either.
Okay, there are two issues in your platform. one dealing with about fair elections, and the other with public campaign financing, which are democracy issues. Those issues were extremely important also to your constituents. 575 of your constituents voted the fair elections issue up, and 557 the campaign financing issue up. And there were very few dissenters from the importance, of those issues. So how do you stand on them?
Well, the public financing of campaigns really is one bullet out of many that are needed to overturn the effects of the Citizens United case. I do not agree with the Citizens United case. My belief is that free speech is a right that must be exercised solely by natural persons, not by corporations or other fictitious legal entities. And one of the best things that can happen to stop the negative effects of this is public financing of campaigns. Because if candidates can raise money to wage respectable campaigns without having to beg for money from corporations, that will do a great deal to leveling the playing field in the political arena. So that's what I think. Fair elections is an entirely kind of separate issue. It has to do with integrity and transparency. One of the principal parts of that would be something called open source software. Right now, our votes are counted by private companies. Some of them even owned by foreign countries or in foreign countries, which use proprietary software to do the vote counting. And if you ask them to see it, they'll tell you, no, you can't. It belongs to us. That's got to end. It's got to be open source so that everyone could be assured that the software and the counting is fair. Paper ballots are also, it seems like a regression, but it's a positive regression if there is such a thing, because paper ballots will assure fairness and lack of cheating, to put it bluntly.
Okay, those I think are very good ideas, and most of the people here are going to strongly agree with them. Okay, but a question I have is, how can we get public financing of elections when we have a situation where private money, is inundating us, and where when we try to stop the flow of the private money into campaigns, we get the Supreme Court by declaring the laws unconstitutional?
Well, that's both a short-term and long-term question. I mean, in the short term, public financing will empower the kinds of candidates, I think, such as me and other progressives who really don't have corporate money available to them to run their campaigns or don't want it, both of which describe me for a second. The longer term view is to craft careful legislation and manage the right kinds of court cases that filter up to the Supreme Court to give it an opportunity to repair what appears to be a devastating decision.
Okay, so I have a question at this point. Are you aware of Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution?
Probably, and maybe not by number, but Article 3 is...
Article 3, Section 2 contains the exceptions clause.
Okay.
Okay, that's a clause which was built in by the framers of the Constitution as a check on the Supreme Court. And what it allows the Congress to do, is to determine the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Over legislation.
Now I know what you're talking about. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Has that ever been invoked?
As far as I know, it has never been invoked, but it is clearly part of the written Constitution. It was placed there for a particular purpose, and the purpose was to constrain the Supreme Court, okay, that had run amok. And it seems to me we have a Supreme Court of that kind now, and that Congress should not be hesitating to use it if the opportunity presents itself.
That's a very interesting idea. Then I'm going to go back to my Constitution and look at that again, because
okay. But Tim Canova was also presented with this idea. Okay, and he studied it, and he seems to think it's a valid idea, and is currently campaigning on it himself.
Well, I know
he's
Tim.
A law professor, okay, in Florida.
Well, I know Tim personally, and we have cross-endorsed each other. So I think I'll have a chat with him about that.
Okay.
That's
okay. I'm sure that he'll be happy to talk to you about it. Okay, and after the show is over, I can send you a link to a blog of mine. Okay, that outlines it as part of a getting money out of politics strategy. Okay.
All right.
So you also have a plank to end homelessness. How would you do that?
Homelessness, there are two kinds of issues which are peculiarly local in nature, which the federal government really is the second line of answers in repairing. Those would be, first one would be housing and real estate, because land is peculiar to where it's located. And the other one would be homelessness, because homelessness, people who are suffering are in the local jurisdictions.
Yes.
What the federal government can do would be to greatly expand funding for the kinds of programs that can bring immediate relief to them. A couple of the ideas that have occurred to me would be to approach FEMA, where the conditions in cities are so bad that they can literally declare a disaster. Here in San Francisco, we have such a bad situation that I don't want to gross out your viewers here, but sanitation issues.
Yes.
That there is literally disease spreading, and to me, that's a disaster. And perhaps FEMA or the CDC, which are federal agencies, could step in and do what's necessary to make sure these poor, wretched people have facilities where they can take care of themselves and not have this problem. The other thing that occurs to me is and this is along the same lines, is the Surgeon General. Surgeon General has certain powers that I'm sure could be exercised in the event of an epidemic. And is homelessness an epidemic? Well, certainly not of the conventional kind, but it certainly may be the kind of epidemic which is devastating very large numbers of people in certain areas. And I don't see why a little creative thinking couldn't be applied to that problem as well.
Well, why not a program that would be federally funded, okay, and locally administered, such that the needs would be defined on a local basis. The types of housing, okay, would also be defined on a local basis, but the program would be funded by the federal government.
Well, obviously, that's an easy answer for me. Anything that provides funds to alleviate the present situation, I would be in favor for. You get into a lot of politics and turf wars over things when you get into that kind of a situation, but I certainly would be in favor of that. I'm not quite sure what that would look like, other than, I mean, we have a monstrous homelessness budget here in the city of San Francisco. It's $250 million with a B.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine.
And where's it going? You know, my question is, where's it going? And where is the evidence of this kind of monstrous amounts of money being spent. What's it producing? It's not doing
Okay,
anything.
so right. Okay, so let's say that the local officials in San Francisco were to design a program to house all the homeless. There was some experiments, okay, that were done, I think, in the state of Utah that showed that at a cost of $35,000 a family or something like that, they were able to house all the homeless.
Oh, I
Why?
don't have any doubt we have the economic wherewithal to do it. What's holding it up, from my understanding, is a lot of social issues. I know that there are shelters here. When you go around and ask the homeless people, do you want to go to the shelter? You might hear, yes, I do, but can I take my friends? Because a lot of these homeless encampments become genuine communities of people.
Yes.
And when you want to pick up one or two, they want to be with their friends. They want to be with the people who they know and maybe even love. A lot of homeless people have pets, like dogs.
Okay, so what if they were able to take these because they weren't simply shelters, but they were homes?
Fine with me. I mean, it's an excellent idea. But, if the answer, I guess, if the answer is that simple, why isn't it being done? That's
well, I think we all know, and the reason is that we have a neoliberal group in Washington that constantly insists that when things that would create a measure, okay, of economic justice and social justice are involved, that those things must be have to be neutral with respect to the deficit, whereas things like our defense spending, okay, and tax cuts for the wealthy and things like that just have to be done because they're necessary, either for the donors, okay, of one of the parties or for our defense industries.
I think
this has to do not with the capacity of the federal government, but with the types of people we have in Congress right now.
I think that there's truth in what you said, but I also think, having lived in San Francisco for almost half a century now and
Yes.
seeing what's happened to us, I also think there is a built-in incentive to the bureaucracy here to keep things the way they are. There is a huge bureaucracy of people who make their living taking care of homeless people. And if the homelessness, I don't want to call it a problem, if the homelessness situation were starting to be solved, a lot of these people would be out of work. I know that sounds very cynical, but I do think there's some people have a stake in complaining about the situation, but keeping it the way it is.
Okay, I think that's very astute, but surely there are nonprofits in San Francisco that would like to solve the homeless problem and that would be willing to tie into federal funding in order to solve it.
I think there are some nonprofits here who are wonderfully motivated, and you've just described them. There are also other nonprofits here who are
not wonderfully motivated.
and are nonprofits in name only, where their top executives are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Oh, yes.
And that seems to me to be inconsistent with the notion of nonprofit.
Okay. Yes,
certainly,
I do.
Certainly, the executives
certainly agree.
The executives are profiting.
Okay, so let's shift now to the global warming issue, okay, and energy subsidies. Those are also very important items in your platform.
Well, global
so what are your
warming,
thoughts on those?
This is another no-brainer. People who are climate change deniers are simply fact deniers. At the core of that, I think, is a broken education system. Rational thinking people do not see facts laid out in front of them and deny that they see them. What I say often is, you may disapprove of gravity or belong to the Flat Earth Society, but that doesn't change the fact that if you step off a cliff, you're going to fall, and when you go up into space, the Earth is round. Climate change deniers are people who have suspended, I guess they say, suspended their rational thinking, suspended rational thought to grasp something that has political value to them or political payoff for them. And it's education. It's about education.
So you would do something about this. So what would you do?
I would, first of all, repair our education system, which is certainly here in California is run amok. We are 47th or 48th out of 50 in what the state spends on its education per student. That's disgraceful. I would reinstate strong, what they call STEM courses, which I think are starting to come back now. Science, technology, electronics, I forgot what the M is.
Engineering, I think.
Mathematics, engineering, yes. That needs to be reinforced tremendously. Yes. I grew up in the 60s. There was no more touchy-feely era than the one I grew up in. But
yes, I know.
That has not served us so well in this respect, because we're way behind on a lot of the things we need to be educated about. The fact that people can invade textbooks, science textbooks, and suggest that evolution is an unproved theory and that their intelligent design may be just, that's just outrageous to me. Outrageous.
Okay, but Steve, but in the global warming area, we have what looks like an immediate crisis.
Yes. Well, the immediate things I've done is, one, I want to ban fracking. My opponent refuses to back anything that would ban fracking, which is inexplicable to me. I signed on to Tulsi Gabbard's bill, where we have to be, I think, fossil fuel free. That's hard to say. Fossil fuel free, I think, is it by 2035? I forget what the number is.
By 2035. So you're going to co-sponsor that bill.
I will sign on the day I get to Congress, yes.
Okay, absolutely. So my question then is, what kind of funding is provided for in that bill before providing the green jobs that we will need to have to succeed in making the transition to a fossil fuel-free economy? There, I said it. Fossil fuel free.
It's not easy, is it?
Well, I don't know. I think it is easy, but I'd like to know how you propose to do it.
I'm not as conversant with that bill's funding mechanism. I'm not completely sure on how that would happen, but what I do understand is as this transition is made from fossil fuel to non-fossil, other sustainable fuels, that it's like our desk. I think just on the fossil, most of the slack of the people who might be giving up jobs in, like the coal industry. Trump is fighting hard for the coal industry, which is a minuscule proportion of our workforce in terms of the numbers of people. And we could easily employ them, I think.
Yes, we could, but this would be fairly expensive, I think. Okay, in other words, if we don't simply wait around for the private sector to create such a transition, okay, but if we propose a government role in this, okay, which is going to be an active role, this could be quite expensive. Okay, for example, a friend of mine who has been on some live streams here has actually proposed a $4 to $6 trillion per year program in order to create the transition.
6 trillion with a T?
4 to 6 trillion. 4 to 6 trillion. And it would not be entirely funded by taxation. In fact, I shouldn't even say at all funded by taxation, because strictly speaking, taxes don't fund anything. Okay, but I don't want to get into the intellectual background for making such a statement. Okay, but it is the truth. Okay, in any event,
this goes back to what we talked about early in our conversation about the military budget. The military budget, $700+ billion, which is grossly bloated and inflated. And the answer to part of your question is, where's the money going to come from? It's going to come from cutting back on making arms. We make so much stuff, defense stuff, that we can't even sell it to ourselves. The Army has no use for it, or the Air Force, or the Navy. It's parked somewhere. And now we've got diplomats in Europe going to our NATO partners, telling them that part of their participation in NATO ought to be buying arms from us, because we need to sell the stuff that we can't possibly use. That's just unnecessary manufacture. It's the inversion that I spoke about a little while ago.
Okay, so now we're getting into funding issues. There are a number of things on your platform, like single payer healthcare, the global warming aspect, the homelessness problem, the problem of transforming the educational system, which you relate to climate, okay, and to the environment, but which of course is a good in itself that we ought to be having, and that we ought to be funding, and that we are not funding. Our educational systems here in the United States are a disaster in most places, not simply in California. Okay, we have to spend a lot more on education, on teachers, on seeing to it, okay, that the programs are quality programs, and it's not something we can wait on. Okay, we have to first of all be competitive with the rest of the world. Okay, but we have to do it for our own people, for their lives and for their futures. And we are not doing this, and this is another casualty of the kind of politics that we have in Washington today. Okay, I think we have to consider how funding actually occurs in Washington. Okay, I think we all know the first step in funding. Congress has to appropriate the funds for particular programs.
Yes, it has to originate in the House of
Yes.
Representatives.
It has to originate in the House, right? Where you're going, hopefully. Okay. However, right now, though the House actually mandates the president and the executive branch of government to spend its appropriations, it does not but directly create the money in the Treasury spending account to actually spend an appropriation. Instead, it leaves that to coordination between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve then will act according to certain rules, the end result of which is that the Federal Reserve tops up the Treasury account with the reserves that are necessary for spending. Okay?
I'm following.
Okay, so the question is this. What kinds of rules are possible for Congress to impose on the Fed to directly fund the spending that Congress is actually mandating on the executive branch? In other words, why not have a mandate for the Fed as well? Now, I posted something on the screen. It's a short clause that could go into every appropriations and CR bill. But there are many of these bills that are thousands of pages, and many more that are hundreds of pages. This would take only a half a page or perhaps even a quarter of a page. And it specifies, well, it has only 2 sentences in it. The first sentence says that the Federal Reserve is ordered to deposit the reserves necessary to spend the appropriations specified in the bill into the Treasury spending account as soon as the bill is passed. And the second clause says that the Federal Reserve is also mandated to place the reserves in the Treasury account that are necessary for the Treasury to pay down the debt that the Treasury is scheduled to pay down during the period of the CR bill or the appropriations bill.
All right, so may I ask a question?
Of course.
On the first sentence pertaining to the first clause of this,
yes.
Where does the Federal Reserve get the money to do that?
Okay, the Federal Reserve has the authority of the Congress to create reserves out of thin air, to mark up accounts. It uses that authority all the time when it performs the open market types of operations. When it does the quantitative easing types of operations, it creates money out of thin air and marks up accounts in return for something else. How can it do that? Because it has the authority of Congress specified in Article 1, Section 8 to do that. All I'm saying here is that what Congress as well should be doing is to mandate the Fed to use its authority from Article 1, Section 8, to fill up the Treasury account with the amount that the Treasury is mandated to spend during the period of the appropriation.
I understand that. I mean, for people who have grown up believing that you can only spend as much as you take in, this is profoundly counterintuitive, is what I would.
It is counterintuitive, but of course, the point is, states are not the issuers of the currency.
Correct.
So they can only spend what they take in. They have that limitation. Okay. But the federal government is the issuer of the currency in the broad sense of the term. It's the issuer of the coins. It's the issuer of the reserves indirectly through the Fed. okay, and it's the issuer of the currency as well, in the narrow sense of the paper currency. Okay, so in the broader sense, okay, of currency, including the paper currency, the coins, okay, and the reserves, it's the province of actually Congress to authorize the issuance, okay, of those things. Now, it has delegated part of its authority to the Treasury Department, okay, specifically the coinage, okay, and also the Bureau, okay, of Engraving and printing still is authorized to actually create the paper currency, most of which then, okay, is issued by the Fed, okay, and of course all the reserves, in other words, the additions to bank accounts with government money, okay, that has been delegated to the Federal Reserve banks, but it's been delegated by the Congress. Congress still retains the authority because when it delegates a certain job to somebody else, that cannot involve, okay, a delegation of its own authority.
Congress does anybody know the long-term effects of this kind of program?
Okay, the long-term effects are going to depend on the Congress. Okay, what I've said here is that this should go into every spending bill. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not this is going to cause inflation to occur is going to depend on what Congress does with taxing bills. What I'm suggesting is that the spending process and the taxing process in the federal government should be separate processes, not coupled as they are now through the PAYGO system. I'm suggesting we have to get rid of the PAYGO system because it has a conservative bias. And we have to reorient the CBO to do something other, okay, than what it's doing now, because really it has no capacity for projecting the future, okay, but that is what it is doing, okay, and its projections are used by conservatives to block all the progressive legislation that would otherwise come through Congress. So these are
forced. They can't afford it. Yeah, I mean,
because they say we can afford it, and they're saying we can't afford it because they're assuming that there's a budget constraint on the government, which occurs because they kind of imply that the government can become insolvent, that it is able to actually run out of money. But as you see from the two clauses here, okay, if you legislate those two clauses, it will certainly be clear to everybody that the federal government cannot run out of money. Okay, in fact, it's even true now that it can't run out of money. And the reason why it's true is that in 1996, the executive branch was given the power to mint a platinum coin that, as in terms of the face value of the coin, would be at the discretion of the Secretary of the Treasury. So theoretically, even though this has never been done by anyone, it would be possible for the Treasury Secretary to cause the mint to issue a $100 trillion coin tomorrow. Now, that $100 trillion coin, okay, or the reserves from it, which the Fed, okay, would issue in return for the coin, could not be used by the executive branch because the purse strings are still in the hands of the Congress. Okay, but the proceeds from the $100 trillion coin, parts of the proceeds, could be used to spend the appropriations of Congress and also to pay down the debt as it falls due. Obama could have used a high-value platinum coin to overcome the debt ceiling. he refused to do it, okay, for various reasons, which are too lengthy, okay, to explore here. But they were not about his power to do it. They were about certain fears, okay, that he had. Okay, but to get back to the main point, though, if these clauses were passed in Congress, then the issue would be what kind of taxation and how much taxation do we need to contain inflation? In other words, it would be clear that spending is about actually providing for the public purpose and for the things people need, and that taxing is about draining a sufficient amount of money from the economy so that we don't have inflation caused by government spending.
Is anybody considering this in the Congress now, this kind of notion?
I don't know if anybody in Congress is considering this kind of thing, but the idea that spending precedes taxation, okay, is an idea that is currently being circulated by the modern money theory, the School of Economics.
Right.
But Stephanie Kelton, okay, who is the chief economist, but for Bernie Sanders, in one of her major landmark papers, showed that in fact taxing does not fund the federal spending. In fact,
right,
neither taxes nor bond revenues actually fund federal spending, but directly. And any person who studies MMT, okay, or is part of the school, will tell you that just as a matter of logic, government spending had to come first, and taxing had to come later. And the reason for that is you can't tax what simply does not exist. The money has to be out there first, okay, before you can tax it. Okay.
No, I understand. That's a lot to process.
Okay, that's a lot to process. Okay,
Yes.
and of course, since we're due to convene again next Thursday, okay, at this point, you will have some time to process it. Okay, but I wanted to bring it up to you, okay, and to put it into your hopper. Okay, and the reason why I wanted to is not only because I think it's a good thing and because I think it's the way to go, but also I think it's something you can use in your campaign against Ms. Pago herself, but Nancy Pelosi. She's the most visible advocate for pay-go in the Congress. Even now, after the Republicans have simply junked pay-go entirely, she still spouts, okay, the ideology, okay, so that if she remains in Congress, okay, and the Democrats should take over, she'll be constantly preaching to the caucus that we need to do pay-go. And all that's going to cause is that there'll only be 2 more years. So, for the Democrats, after they take over, then the Republicans are going to come back in because the Democrats won't be able to do a thing.
That's true.
As long as they're limited by pay-go.
All right. Well, let's break till our next session, but I want to leave you and maybe the people who are watching with a question that I have, which is that even the neoliberal Democrats condemn Citizens United. I mean, they condemn it, all right, but do they? Do they really mean what they're saying? Because if we really could not get corporate donations, I think we need to take a step back and look at how much of the money flowing in to the coffers of mega fundraisers like Nancy Pelosi are coming from corporate donors. And if somebody put a stopper in that bottle, is that really what they want, or are they just paying lip service to it? And that's something that's occurred to me.
And that's something that's occurred to me too. And I think the answer is actually pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but we'll certainly think about that for next time.
All
And I
right.
certainly think that when you go through the comments on this, you will see quite a lot of people, okay, are agreeing with this.
Yes.
Okay, so
Well,
thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. This was a very stimulating conversation. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
So did I. Okay, thank you for coming. Okay, I'm going to stay here but for a while and discuss with our people the issues that are raised. And by next week, there'll be a further chance to talk about your platform. Okay, and
no, I have more. I have other items. Yes. Can I give my?
Yes, you do.
Can I give my donation link?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
My donation link is donate.jaffe, Jaffe, the number 4, the word Congress.com. I can do even better than that.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, wait a minute. I'll take this out to give you more room. Okay, to show this. And I'll minimize myself as well. I'm sorry, I maximize myself. I'll minimize myself there. Okay, what does that say?
It says, well, I'll spell it out. It says donate, DONATE, at Jaffe, the number 4, the word Congress.com. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. It's donate.JaffeforCongress.com. Okay. Donate.JaffeforCongress.com.
Okay, so thank you. When we finish here, okay, come back to the broadcast, okay, to Facebook.
Okay.
You'll see comments there, okay,
right.
And you can certainly leave a comment with the links to your donation page.
I will. I appreciate that very much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And, I encourage you to do it. Okay, so I will take you out of the stream now. Okay.
I'll see you in a week.
I'll see you in a week. Okay. Okay, so I'm continuing for a while now. I don't get as much chance to talk with you, okay, as I would like. Okay, I thank you all for coming. And I'm here to consider comments and questions. Is there anything that you would like me? I see the links to the donation page, so thank you all for giving them. And Tino Garcia Barragan says about lip service all over the place. Well, there may be more. It may not be entirely lip service. As you see, I'm trying to push things with him and make things a lot more specific. I believe in specificity for candidates. No pay, go pay. Yep, that's the slogan, go pay. Use overt congressional financing, OCF. So it seems to me that we need to send some links to Steve Jaffe. So people ought to supply links to Stephanie's key article and other links, okay, that you think are important. I will supply some links too. Okay, I see Car Emmanuel. I'm not sure that's quite how to pronounce your first name. Says, I see where Joe is going with this. Yes, I guess it was pretty clear where I was going. It turned out that Steve was very gracious in going there with me. But Colin Daybell says Jaffe is a capitalist fraud. Well, Colin, why do you say that? I'd be interested in knowing why. STEAM, not STEM, including the arts. I'll go for that because I love the arts too, and I'll go for that anytime. Let's start talking to more scientists that are engaging beyond Bill Nye. Yep. A good comment, I think. Casey Callahan, quote, but disapprove of gravity. Rob Rivera, hey Yoda, hey Rob. The federal job guarantee would cover both sides of that issue. Yeah, next week we're going to talk about the federal job guarantee because I'd like to teach Steve how the job guarantee relates to a number of his issues, like transforming the economy, closing private prisons, ending homelessness, fighting global warming, contributing to LGBTQIA, health, jobs, and housing, ending the school to prison pipeline, protecting cities from gentrification, all these things, and the minimum wage plan also. All these things can be impacted by the federal job guarantee program. And I hope to get Steve by the end of next week signed up to the federal job guarantee program because with that should put the nail into Nancy Pelosi's coffin, I hope. And Tino Garcia Barragan says, hey, Stephen, you're going to get this done. Side note, please make sure to differentiate small businesses from major corporations when speaking about employers. Just a touch of advice. And Mindy Donham says she's a shill. She's not simply a shill. She's also part of the group that's employing the shills. She's the shiller or the shillor or whatever. Okay, so folks, we've had a very good group here tonight. Okay, a very active group, but we've also had a very small group. Can anybody explain why? Steve is running in the most important of the primary races for Congress in the whole United States at this point. Even more important than the Tim Canova, Debbie Wasserman Schultz the primary race. In the Florida, is it in the Florida 23rd, if I recall correctly? That is the number of the district. Okay, but this is the California 12th. And this is a vital race for progressives to win. And so it's vital for us to get Steve going. It really is. To give him the tools he needs to win. And to bring him around to some thinking that he's clearly never heard before. And I think he knows now that he's never heard it before. But anyway, can somebody explain to me why this group was so small? And why Thursday night at 9 o'clock tends to bring in small groups? I mean, what's the problem? What's the problem? Anyway, Casey says, but not enough advertising? It could be not enough advertising. It could be. Anyway, Mark Fabian says, shill master, shill mistress. Susan Elder says, this is a great way to educate politicians about MMT. You're performing extremely valuable service, Dr. Joe. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Yes, I do think this is the way to educate politicians about MMT. I never even mentioned MMT, okay, until the end, until I got to talk about overt congressional financing. I got to talk about taxes don't fund spending. I got to talk about the Stephanie stuff. And only then did I mention the initials MMT. I certainly didn't ask him if he'd ever heard of MMT. Okay. What I tried to do instead was to lead him from his own program to a political problem he has in relation to his own program, and then to a solution to that problem, which was related to MMT. Mindy says, Russell, 155 shares. Not sure I get that, Mindy. I don't know how many shares we had here tonight, but anyway, Susan said lots of local political activity going on. Yeah, that could be it. Russell says there was still 27 shares. If that's the total number of shares for this particular stream, then that's why our group is so small here tonight. But by comparison, for the Tim Canova stream, I had more than 500 shares for that stream. Steve had close to 1,000 shares for the Bill Mitchell, Stephanie Kelton stream. Okay, it used to be months ago before Facebook changed its algorithms that somebody could get something like 6, 7, 8K views with 273 shares. But I've seen people get over 300 shares in recent videos and end up with less than 1,000 views. With less than 1,000 views. I don't know what's going on here, but it's not good for RP. we need to do everything we can to get this stream shared after the fact, and for advertise the stream coming up in a week. We've had 154 comments so far, and there are 19 viewers now. Okay. Through much of the stream, we were in the low 20s. I don't think we ever got above the 30 mark for this particular stream. I think, given the importance of the race, we should have been around the 80 or 90 mark in terms of number of people watching this at once. So I don't know what to do. I don't know why this is happening, but I know if it continues to happen, then there's no way we're going to have the kind of impact that we must have to change things. So if we care about change, and if we care about actually facilitating change, then we have to do everything we can to stop this kind, of low attendance, to increase this kind, of low attendance. It's not what ought to be happening. So Russell says, interesting, I see 27, but when I click shares, it's in the 160s. Yeah, that is interesting. And Rocco says, really, with RP, we should have viral shit. Yeah, I certainly think we should, Rocco. But the problem is how to get it. With this discussion, and with the importance of that particular primary race, this should have gone viral, because this candidate really appeared to be open to considering these changes to the PAYGO system in Congress. The questions he asked about it were all intelligent questions. They were honest questions. They were the questions of someone who is intelligent and who knows the law. The questions he asked about Article 3, Section 2 were also intelligent questions. And I have no doubt he'll seek the advice of Tim Canova, about this. So we'll have to see. Oh, now I see we have 166 comments, 71 reactions. It says, see all. Oh, I see. That's for seeing all the reactions. Okay. Let's see. So now, how do I get rid of seeing all? Sandy Degg says that she's sharing right now. Thank you, Sandy. That helps. Funny how Robert Reich videos are still common. Yes, it's funny because I don't think he really knows what he's about at all. If people listen to him, what we need won't happen. Certainly will not happen. No, Stephen Jaffe was here. He was here for an hour. What happened was he had a hard break he had to take at 10 p.m. But we've already made arrangements for him to come back again next Thursday at 9 p.m. for a further discussion, okay, of at least an hour. I think this is good because I was successful in getting my ideas to him in the first hour. And in the second hour next week, he'll have plenty of chance to discuss further his own platform and the things he cares about, the specific ideas that he has. Okay, and also whether he's willing to go further with the ideas that I presented to him here tonight. So what I urge you all to do is to comment here now, because he may be looking at the comment stream. The reason why I say that is because I invited him to leave his donation information on the comment stream. So Mindy Donham asks a good question. Is Reich paying for views, maybe? Well, that might be the issue now. It may be that what Facebook is trying to do is to get everybody to pay for views. And those who don't pay are going to be sabotaged by the algorithms, and they will not get their viewers. Now, I don't know how much you have to pay, how much we would routinely have to pay to boost our live streams, but we may have to look into that. Rob Baxter says, I found that Steve's impromptu videos receive more traffic than others that are scheduled ahead of time. Yes, I agree, Baxter. Sorry, Rob. Rob Baxter. Okay, I think that this is true, but Steve has special circumstances. And the special circumstances are that Steve is the leader, of RP. So when he goes live, everybody is ready on call to run to his streams and to share them wisely. And that's always going to be the case because it's natural to rally around the flag. So that may be what explains the higher traffic that Steve gets. Yes, Russell, I think Steve was a good interviewee. He was very willing to listen when he heard something he hadn't heard before. I noticed Tim Canova was that way also. Michael Weiss was that way too, actually. There are a lot of candidates we've talked to of late who are willing to listen, who really view these interviews as conversations. I try to build them, as conversations, but there are some commenters who don't get that they're conversations. In other words, they don't see them as a two-way exchange. They think that what I should be doing is getting the candidates' views and maybe asking a tough question or two, and that's it. And of course, I don't operate in that way. Who else is running? I think it's basically Nancy Pelosi and Steve. There may be some minor candidates who are running. But Steve has the only shot to get close to Pelosi, I believe, okay, at this point. And by the way, whoever else runs in that district is sure to lose because that's a gerrymandered district. And in the last about 3 elections, but Nancy Pelosi has gotten 85% of the vote in the general, 83% of the vote in the general, and most recently 80% of the vote in the general. And even though she's losing popularity now, I think you can count on her to get at least 70% of the vote in the general. So I believe that the primary race is the contest out there. It's the only way realistically to beat Nancy Pelosi. And I think beating her is extremely important. It would just be such a blow to the establishment of the Democratic Party. It would be the kind of blow that they've never suffered before, not even with respect to Bernie's relative success. Yes, Bernie had a tremendous amount of success, but with all the rigging, okay, that was done, he wasn't able to turn the tide. Okay, yes, it was rigged. If it hadn't been, he probably would have won. But the fact remains, okay, that in the end he did not. But if Stephen were to win in this district, it would be an earthquake in the Democratic Party. There would be an earthquake. So I think we got to do our best to get him elected. We also have to do our best to get him to toe the line in terms of specifics on his platform. So far tonight, he was specific about some things, okay, but not specific about others. His feelings on global warming are strong, but his knowledge of specifics, okay, on global warming is very, very shallow. His knowledge of policy alternatives is very, very shallow. He just can't sit there and wait for the transition to wind and solar. It's coming too slowly to do us any good. He said he signed on to Tulsi's bill to fully convert by 2035. Well, it seems to me 2035 might be too late. But anyway, I am unaware that Tulsi's bill provides the kind of spending that would be necessary to manage the transition. I'm convinced that that's going to involve a very active federal role that will be in the many trillions, okay, of dollars. I think we have to look at that, and we have to push for that. And we have to push for our politicians to sign up to that. I don't recall exactly the date of the primary, but I believe it's something like June 8th or June 10th, okay, in California. California primaries, okay, are usually late. Let's see, Democratic. Okay, the primary dates Democratic Party primaries in California. I have it coming up on my screen now. In the California State Senate, all 53 of California seats in California's Class 1 seat needed. June 5th. There are 89 days until the election. Okay, everybody get that? It's June 5th. So I was 3 days off about the exact date. Okay, anybody else want to ask a question? Susan Eldridge asked, I haven't really been following California, but you're right. We all should be supporting him. How can he get elected with the corruption and the gerrymandering? Okay, the gerrymandering has already been done. And in his district, it's created an overwhelming majority for the Democrats. And he'd be running as a Democrat. So if he beats Nancy in the primary, his election is practically guaranteed. And Brad Sandler says California doesn't have a gerrymandering problem, only Republican-controlled states do. Yeah, that's probably true. There may be a few exceptions where the governorship in certain states has turned over to Democrats now, but they don't have control of the legislature yet. Anyway, they cannot change the gerrymander until the new census is out, so it can't be changed until 2021. Okay, of course, the courts can order the districts to be redrawn. That's what can happen. But otherwise, things can't be done by the legislature again until 2021. Okay, in any case, in Nancy Pelosi's district of the California 12th, the key race is her race with Steve. So off that, I'd say he's the most important congressional candidate we have interviewed so far. Sandy says, some of the post shares that are submitted to groups are pending approval by an admin, so some of the shares will not show until they get approval. Yeah, that's true, but if they get approval and the stream is over, then they will not be able to see the live stream. Hey, Tricia, how you doing? How is his following in his district? I have the impression he has a pretty good following there, that he's a fairly popular guy. But I don't know of any polls yet that are showing the way things are, in his district. Since it's only a congressional district, however, he may be able to get sufficiently well known in the district that in the final days, the name recognition will not be a factor. Casey says, we totally need a badass third party. Hopefully he learns to dig the Green Party of the United States platform. I hope so, Casey. I think the state platform in California is actually pretty good, isn't it? But for the Green Party. IKR, Mindy, what is that? And yes, you were, Joe. I'm not sure what that refers to. Yes, Trish, I'm very well. I continue to be very well. I continue to enjoy life. Bonnie is enjoying life too, thank you. I think we both are enjoying life. And one of the things that I think we enjoy most is these live streams. But that's far from the only thing. Oh, Cora. Got it. Got it. Okay, Cora Emanuel. Okay, thank you, Cora. IKR, I know right. Thank you, Russell. Dave Pilkinson says, landslide. Does that mean we're expecting a landslide in Pennsylvania? I certainly hope so. And Casey says, I was wondering too, Cora. But I'm a guy. I kind of thought that because I thought I saw you on some of the RP internal streams. Okay, any questions that anybody needs answered? Is there anything obscure about what I've been saying about overt congressional financing? I know I've been spending a lot of time on it, but I think it's really supremely important. I believe that taxes don't fund spending is completely true, and that we really need to teach people that, okay, and they need to learn it. But even when we teach a lot of people that, and even after they have learned it, there will still be a large part of the population that will believe that the debt, quote unquote, is a problem that they just cannot stomach. And the Republicans and the conservatives will be able to use the existence of the debt as a political issue against the progressives. So, I think if we want to do something about that, we have to take that issue off the table. We have to kill that issue. And one of the most important things about overt congressional financing is that if it gets institutionalized in every appropriations bill, in every CR bill, it will be plain within 6 months that there is no debt issue. There is no debt issue at all. Okay. Now I know that the debt we have now is not really a debt. in the same sense as the debt that I have to the bank, or that a credit card debt is, or that the kinds of debts that we all have are. Okay. I know that the debt the Treasury Department has now is akin to the debt that a savings bank would have to its depositors if the savings bank had the power to create money. Okay. So in other words, that's not really a debt in the way we think about it. As Bill Mitchell once said, debt is not debt. Yeah, absolutely true. Everybody ought to realize it. And in the best of all possible worlds, they would realize it, and they would just ignore the debt forever after, and they would just repeal the debt ceiling and put that to bed. So when we needed debt financing, we could go on, okay, with debt financing, okay, and it would never be a problem. But this is the real world. It's not the best of all possible worlds. And we're talking about what? Say a decade to get most of the population oriented to the idea that taxes do not fund spending, and that our national debt is not really a debt. I mean, there's a large proportion of the population out there that still denies the fact of evolution. They still deny evolution. Why? Because it didn't sound right to them, and they decided to deny it. And I guarantee that there will be a fairly high proportion of the population that 10 years from now will still believe in the debt, if we still have a debt. So I say, we can use overt congressional financing to get rid of the debt. So why not? I mean, what harm does it do us to get rid of it in this way? Dr. Joe, says Casey Callahan, why do you think the making of the Federal Reserve in 2013 was unconstitutional? Okay. This, Casey, is very easy to explain. Because the Constitution was written and incorporated the principle of separation of the powers of government into three branches. There is an executive branch, there is a judicial branch, and there is a legislative branch. Okay? They are the three branches of government. The executive functions, okay, of government. In other words, the implementation, okay, of legislation is left to the executive branch, okay, of government. Now, what does the Federal Reserve do? The Federal Reserve implements a part of the spending power of the Congress. What part? The creation of reserves in bank accounts. That is a congressional power. Article 1, Section 8. It needs to be, the implementation of it is supposed to be an executive function. Since it's an executive function, it should be done within the executive branch, under the supervision of the President of the United States, who is the chief executive of the executive branch of the government. Congress created an executive organization performing functions that are executive functions of government, and placed it outside of the executive branch. This is blatantly unconstitutional. Now, every time that people have tried to sue on constitutional grounds, the Supreme Court has refused to consider the constitutional issues involved. But that doesn't make the creation of the Federal Reserve constitutional. It only means that the Supreme Court refuses to rule on the constitutionality question. So anyway, that's why I say, okay, it's unconstitutional. Now, ironically, perhaps, okay, what I've been telling you is I've been expounding on the unitary theory of the executive in the U.S. government. Ironically, a principal exponent of the unitary theory was Antonin Scalia until his death. And some of us wondered what Scalia was going to do if the constitutional question was raised on his watch. But because it seemed to us that to be consistent with his own earlier rulings on various things, that he would have had to declare the Federal Reserve unconstitutional, and either to order the entire vacating of the legislation, or order as a remedy the immediate incorporation of the Federal Reserve into the executive branch under the Treasury Department. In any case, I advocate for that right now. I advocate that what Congress ought to do right now is to recognize the unconstitutionality of the Federal Reserve as constituted, and to nationalize the banks, that is the Federal Reserve banks. The Board of Governors, okay, is already an agency, okay, of government, and have the regional banks and also the Board of Governors placed under the Treasury Department. And the head of the Federal Reserve, the chairperson, would then become an assistant secretary in the Treasury Department. And we'd proceed but from there. But Congress, of course, is not going to do that. And if we progressives take over Congress, that's not the first thing, okay, that I want us to do. What I want us to do first is to pass H.R. 676 and then do a green New Deal post haste. And only after we've passed the social benefit legislation and the economic benefit legislation that we have to pass, should we then come back, okay, and consider reform of our banking structure, because the study of the structural issues will be a big thing. It will be a controversial thing. It's going to take a long time to resolve. And we need Congress to focus its attention on things that can be done but quickly, for the benefit of the whole population. We need that, and we need that badly. So, Casey, did I answer the question to your satisfaction? Yes, Cora, I agree it would be beneficial to live stream them both simultaneously. And I think that we may have the technical I think we have the technical expertise now to do that. But when our technical people will get the time to implement it, I don't know. I mean, I know that it was done for one of Steve's live streams, at least. So it could be done for other live streams also. Mark Fabian says, and the suffering, and then balance the economy. And I'd add, and then balance the financial system. Okay, any other questions or comments that you'd like me to see or that you'd like me to address? Okay, if not, I will call it a night. A secular amen to that. Yeah, sure, you can share it with Shane Fry. I don't see why you can't. Oh, yes, I'd like to see Shane run for Congress, too. Can he run for Congress in 2018, or will he wait till 2020? End the suffering and send the non-thinkers to another planet. Cora says, thank you, Joe. Great interview. Good night. Okay, good night, Cora. Good night, all. I'm going to end now. And good night to you, Trish.